So recently there's been a little bit of a situation going on in the Honkai Star community and also in the wider gacha community as a whole. And well, this is mainly to do with two creators being MrPokke and Tectone. Now, you've probably seen some different clips and stuff going around and, you know, people fighting and whatever. And I wanted to give a little bit more context and pretty much a video that is condensed down for the people that are actually employed and don't want to go through 6-hour VODs or whatever just to find out what's going on. You know, what is going on with Honkai Star, what is going on between MrPokke and Tectone, and how it's actually ended up. So leave a like and subscribe, and also go to game services, my code Kaza, get 10% off. And yeah, let's get back into the video. So obviously this all starts off with Honkai Star Rail. Now, if you don't know, it was leaked a while ago, a couple of months ago, talking about the character Castorice, who's a new character coming to Honkai Star Rail who has one big problem, which is the fact that she has a global passive. Now, if you don't know, a global passive pretty much allows an entire account to be affected, and what she does is she does a revive kind of effect, which pretty much affects the entire account, meaning that if you have Castorice in your account, not even on the field, she's going to help out and revive some of your characters, which has become a big problem and a big talking point in the Honkai Star community. Now, there's other nuances to her entire kit and stuff like that, which does cause future problems, but it does pretty much symbolize the start of global passives being added to Honkai Star, which is a big issue, because it means that there could be a lot of issues whenever it comes to balancing, and also it's just super greedy from Hoyoverse themselves, because again, they are just implementing a character that is essentially just a must pull here. I mean, you know, if you don't pull her, your account is going to be pretty much bricked. I'm not saying it's going to be the end of the world or anything like that, but she's going to be a very important character, and it's almost like Hoyoverse are kind of spoon feeding you it and telling you, hey, you kind of have to pull this because, you know, it's a universally good character, which, you know, I don't have any issues with if it's a meta character, because that can go up and down, but global passives never change, and global passives always stay the same, and it will always affect the account, which I think is a big issue, and this shouldn't be a part of the game. And many people also agree, including MrPokke himself. Now, obviously, you know, this all started out with MrPokke saying stuff like hail global passive, and pretty much just making a lot of jokes centered around, you know, the global passive, and, you know, either pretending he likes it or maybe he genuinely liked it, I don't know. But again, he's posting a lot of posts saying, you know, hail global passive, etc. But also at the same time, he actually released a video a couple days ago essentially saying why the system is bad and why this actually needs to improve. And, you know, he goes into, you know, why some people might not like it, why some people might be pulling it, and also some other kind of fixes or changes that they could make to it to actually make the global passive better and work better within the game, and maybe make it just accessible for everyone. But then also what pretty much caught everyone off guard was the fact that he said that he was still going to be pulling for this character. Now, obviously, I think that MrPokke can do whatever he wants. You know, he's a grown man. He can literally pull on a character if he wants to and not pull on a character if he doesn't want to. But that doesn't change the fact that he will be labeled as a hypocrite. And I think this is one of the main points that MrPokke just doesn't get whenever he has these arguments later on, which we will talk about, is the fact that, you know, no one in the kind of creator sphere is saying that, you know, we're going to constantly, you know, label him as a hypocrite. Obviously, yes, you know, people will label him as a hypocrite at the start, but it's not like people are going to be constantly doing it and creators are going to be going like, oh, MrPokke, that hypocrite guy. But what is going to happen is the community are going to label you as that. Now, that is nothing to do with the creators, really. I mean, obviously, yes, the creators can start that, and they can kind of start that label going, and, you know, it'll get continued on by the community. But that was one of the main points that a lot of people weren't very happy with, especially Tectone as well, was the fact that he's being hypocritical by saying the fact that, you know, oh, this is really bad, but I'm still going to support it and pull on it anyways, because a lot of these creators like Tectone are not going to be pulling for Castorice. Now, obviously, you know, Tectone actually had a gacha cast the other day, which featured Captain Cavernas, JJP, who's I think he's a wizardry streamer, so again, he doesn't really have too much to do with this. And then obviously Genocide, and then Shinya, and then, you know, Tectone himself. And essentially they were having this call, and they were talking about, you know, wizardry, and also they talked about the Honkai Star stuff. And essentially what Shinya did was he mentioned MrPokke in the kind of cast without actually saying his name, but it was very obvious that it was him, like, let's be real. And he said that essentially he was like the new Enviosity, which obviously MrPokke was not very happy about, and MrPokke ended up joining the call and, you know, having a little bit of an argument, and even, you know, came in pretty much swinging whenever it comes to a lot of this stuff. And essentially a lot of these points were all coming from Shinya, and this wasn't actually coming from Tectone or any of the creators really in the cast. I mean, some of them did kind of, you know, make a couple comments on it, but again, it was mainly all Shinya. And, you know, this always should have been a thing between MrPokke and Shinya. You know, I like them both. They're both really nice people. And I think that, you know, honestly, it should have just been something that Shinya and MrPokke had to sort out. But I think MrPokke saw it a little bit of a different way and ended up kind of bringing Tectone into it later on, even though Tectone was actually the one kind of defending a lot of the points and saying, okay, maybe we're going a little bit too far with this. And, you know, calling someone Enviosity on a stream is pretty crazy. Enviosity did do some pretty terrible things, and, you know, he's just not a very nice guy. And the difference between, you know, Enviosity and MrPokke is that MrPokke is actually genuinely a nice guy. Like, I'm not gonna lie, he is a nice guy. But obviously Shinya made the comparison there, which got him heated. He also mentions the fact that he was just kind of demoted in a couple of league games. So again, he was a little bit tilted from that too, and he essentially got in the call very, very aggro. Now, they had their conversations, they kind of talked it out and stuff like that, and then MrPokke left. They carried on with their gacha cast. And then that brings us pretty much to today and the current situation. And now this might be a lot of clips that you've seen, and obviously yesterday, or it should actually be 2 days ago by the time this video comes out, but essentially what has been happening is the communities have kind of been brewing in the comments and going after kind of Tectone, but also going after MrPokke as well. I think both communities on Tectone's side and also in MrPokke's side, they've been kind of you know, making a couple of comments. But the difference is, in a lot of MrPokke's chat, you know, they're saying stuff like, we need to kill Tectone, which again is kind of crazy. No one really says that, and you know, that is unmoderated. Maybe that guy did get deleted later on, but from as far as I know, it was unmoderated, and you know, all of these people were just like free to say this kind of stuff, which is kind of messed up. You know, I feel like even if, you know, you'd have a kind of disagreement or whatever, your chat should still be moderated to a level where they're not saying stuff like this. They were also, you know, saying a lot of other things about Tectone, calling him different kind of things, which I can't really mention in this video. You can kind of guess the things that they were actually labeling him as, because again, it's pretty terrible. And, you know, they were going very, very aggro. Now, that's not to say that, you know, Tectone's chat weren't also pretty aggro as well, but I don't think it was to the level of what was actually going on in MrPokke's chat. But again, you know, these two communities have essentially been brewing and brewing and brewing, and you know, MrPokke's community has become more angry at Tectone, and you know, the other way around, which has become this kind of whole thing where both the creators are kind of forced to talk about it now, and it becomes really awkward and weird because again, you know, MrPokke and Tectone have been friends for like what, 2 years or so. That's what he mentions in his video, which we will go through in a minute. And they've been friends for a long time. You know, they met up, you know, MrPokke went over there, saw Tectone and things like that, which again, it's kind of sad that it's actually come to this in the end, and it just seems that there's been a big difference in communities. And obviously MrPokke actually released a video recently talking about why I'm skipping Castorice, and this has been the next kind of step, I guess, in this whole entire situation, is the fact that he actually says he's not going to be pulling for Castorice anymore. Now, a lot of this video, I feel like he says, I'm not going to be pulling for Castorice, and then just goes into the entire kind of drama or situation or whatever. You know, he doesn't really refer to a lot of the like in-game mechanics as to why he's not pulling. He mainly goes into talking about the gacha cast and what happened on the gacha cast and everything like that. And obviously this started up a little bit of a war in the community and everything like that. And, you know, Tectone reacted to it. A lot of creators reacted to it, and you know, they weren't very happy with it. And obviously it now brings us to today with a couple videos. Obviously the first one being regarding MrPokke, which Tectone, I'm pretty sure he actually recorded this offline, talks about MrPokke, talks about their past, and talks about the fact that he's not going to be interacting with him anymore. So those two are not going to be creating content with each other anymore. They're not going to be raiding each other. They're not going to be interacting with each other anymore, which again, I think is such a shame, because again, they did make some pretty good content together, and you know, obviously it is a pretty long friendship. I mean, 2 years, and you know, it's just come to this due to a global passive, which honestly I think is, yeah, just very sad in general. And Tectone goes into, you know, why this is the case and why he's been getting a lot of hate from this community, and that why, you know, stepping back and just not involving himself with MrPokke anymore is probably best for him, and also best for MrPokke as well in terms of viewership, which honestly I do think is a good choice in terms of, I guess, content and just, you know, keeping this community a little bit more positive. Because again, if these two constantly interact, then there is going to be even more problems, because again, the chat has just built up this hatred for each other, which again is just terrible. And it's just like one of those things where it's just very unfortunate. And obviously MrPokke actually makes a tweet as well saying, I've sorted things out with Tectone privately. Going forward, we will not interact in any content. He will not bring me up, I will not bring him up. That is the best way for both of us and our communities. For what it's worth, I still have nothing but respect for him. And then Tectone says, pull Castorice now please. Bro immediately interacts. So again, it seems like, you know, in the background, I feel like they're going to be good, but I feel like in terms of content and, you know, in terms of interacting with each other, you know, on stream, on videos or whatever, it's going to be a lot less, because again, that's what the fan base sees, that's what the commenters see, which, you know, just causes a whole lot of problems. And that is pretty much the entire situation. Now, MrPokke to this day still isn't pulling for Castorice, I don't think. And a lot of the arguments that people are bringing up in this situation were things like, oh, Tectone forced him, or, you know, they ganged up on him, when, you know, it's just so dumb, because as you can see here, as, you know, I've explained in this entire video, MrPokke was the one to join the call. You know, they didn't, you know, to drag him into the call and say, hey man, why are you pulling for Castorice? That wasn't the case. You know, he decided to join the call on his own volition, and obviously, you know, they explained to him their kind of point of view. So I don't think this is ganging up at all. And also, they mentioned several times, you know, a lot of people mentioned several times, he can pull it if he wants. You know, no one's saying that he doesn't have to pull for Castorice. No one's saying that he has to pull for Castorice either. He can do what he wants. You know, he's his own guy. As you know, Tectone says in the video, he's almost 30. You know, a lot of people are acting like he's just like this 16-year-old guy who, you know, doesn't know any better. No, he's almost 30 years old. You know, he literally owns these houses and things like that. He's like investing in them. You know, he's not this like necessarily young guy that maybe his chat make him out to be, which obviously, you know, does get kind of frustrating. And he can make his own decisions whenever it comes to Honkai Star. And honestly, you know, if he went full shield and went, yeah, I'm pulling for it because I'm a massive Hoyo shield and things like that, and I don't mind that, you know, I'm just getting the bag, honestly, I would respect that. You know, I honestly think that, you know, if he wants to pull it and wants to just, you know, go ahead and do it. But I think what mainly a lot of these content creators have a problem with is the fact that, you know, it was kind of hypocritical to just kind of keep pulling, especially after, you know, making multiple videos talking about how bad the actual system was and how bad the global passive was in general. But yeah, that is pretty much all you need to know from this situation. I hope I kept it pretty short. I hope I kept it pretty sweet in terms of, you know, what is actually going on, in terms of the different situations that have led up to this, and, you know, finally the conclusion, or I hope the conclusion. I'll make a follow-up video if anything else does happen. And yeah, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, because to enjoy this video, as I said, go to GameSubs, use my code KAZA, get 10% off. And also, this is kind of a different thing I'm doing on the main channel. I haven't really made a video like this in probably about 6 months or so. So if you guys do enjoy it, then let me know down in the comments, because again, I can keep making more videos like this, keeping you guys up to date on a lot of the stuff that is going on in the community, because again, I do actually really enjoy talking about it, and it's something that I'm, you know, quite heavily involved in, so I do really enjoy, you know, just reporting on this kind of stuff. Yeah, that's all I got, and I'll see you guys at the next one. That's all. See ya.